about something that I think is really, really important to clear up immediately, is that there is a broad range of hip dysplasia, isn't there? I think that's a very key point that we need to make at the moment, because I know that I have owners come onto Holly's Arm and they go, my dog's got hip dysplasia. And it's almost like you've got it or you haven't. So it's binary, yes or no. What's your thoughts on that?
It's the most important starting point. I see the same thing. People they'll get this diagnosis of hip dysplasia and it's kind of treated like a life sentence. But you're right. The majority of cases of hip dysplasia are hidden and don't have a clinical consequence. So I think when you're classifying hip dysplasia, you can do it in all sorts of different ways. The easiest starting point is to classify it as a dog that has genes that code for hip dysplasia, but they don't actually have hip dysplasia. Dogs that have genes that code for hip dysplasia and an abnormal radiograph, but no clinical sign. That's the biggest group by a mile. And then dogs that have clinical hip dysplasia. So when you're talking about how to manage dogs, you're talking about basically two different populations. One that have an abnormal X-ray but no clinical signs, and one that have an abnormal X-ray with clinical signs.
Yeah, okay. So that's a really key point, guys, that it isn't a black and white condition. And we see this all the time. Something that I want to kind of clear up is that people come onto Holly's Arm and they say, my dog's got hip dysplasia, but generally the dogs that they're talking about are in their latter years. So at that point, they've actually got hip osteoarthritis secondary to hip dysplasia. Can you just clarify so that people understand what the difference is, but how they're associated?
Yes. I think probably go right to the beginning, okay, of what really is it? What is hip dysplasia? So the first thing that many people don't know is it's treated like a congenital disease, right? So that means that a puppy is born with abnormal hips, but that's not true. The puppy is born with morphologically normal hips. They have a series of genes that code for hip dysplasia. Whether or not those genes are expressed, we'll talk about in a minute. They have then a problem of laxity of the hip, and that laxity then causes remodeling of the hip. The remodeling of the hip is the body's attempt to make things better. It's got a loose hip and the body tries to fix the problem. And then subsequently, you have a dog with an arthritic hip, which is caused by this problem of laxity followed by abnormal shape of the hip. So you've got dysplasia and you've got secondary osteoarthritis. The secondary osteoarthritis is in part the body trying to fix the problem. So when you take an X-ray, you'll feel this new bone around about the hip. And that scares people. They think, I've got this horrible looking hip. But in many cases, that's actually something which is the body trying to help the issue. And inside the joint, you've got cartilage disease, which is osteoarthritis.
Right, cool. So just so you know, guys, because a lot of people come into Holly's Arm and I feel like correcting them, and I really don't want to because it's not really a cool thing to do, but they come in and their dog's like a 10-year-old Labrador, they go, my dog's got hip dysplasia. You're like, no, at this point, your dog's got osteoarthritis. So, right, shall we start with a case and follow it through? So from a young puppy and go through, because that's kind of what we were trying to do, wasn't it? So we'll start really young, right in around about 6 to 8 weeks, and then go